The price of a gallon of gasoline at your local pump is currently tethered to a 21-mile stretch of water thousands of miles away, and Donald Trump just sent a message to Tehran that the world cannot afford a closed door. You are about to witness the most dangerous game of chicken in modern history as the United States military shifts into a war footing to prevent a global economic heart attack. By the end of this deep dive, you will understand the secret tactical plan sitting on the president's desk and the exact reason why the Navy is moving carrier strike groups toward a choke point that handles 20% of the world's liquid energy. Before we get into the heavy details, I want to ask for your support in a very specific way because a colleague of mine at a major news network recently told me that independent creators couldn't handle complex geopolitical reporting without a teleprompter and $1 million studio, but I believe that you prefer raw, unvarnished truth over corporate talking points. Help me prove that the new age of independent media is stronger than the old guard by hitting that like button and subscribing, so we can show the world that we value deep analysis over sound bites. To understand why the Strait of Hormuz is suddenly the center of the universe, you have to realize that Donald Trump is operating on a doctrine of maximum deterrence that looks very different from anything we have seen in the last 4 years. I am going to reveal a specific figure regarding the cost of an aircraft carrier's daily operation and why the Pentagon is willing to spend it to keep the Persian Gulf open. But first, we have to look at the red line that was just crossed. Think of the Strait of Hormuz as the jugular vein of the global economy, where if you pinch it even slightly, the entire body starts to go into shock. This waterway is so narrow that the shipping lanes are only 2 miles wide in each direction, and when Iran threatens to seed those lanes with naval mines or deploy swarm boats, they aren't just threatening a few tankers, they are threatening to turn off the lights in cities from London to Tokyo. Donald Trump knows that if he allows the strait to close for even 48 hours, the price of oil could scream past $150 a barrel, triggering a domestic inflation crisis that would wreck his economic agenda before it even starts. Did you know that it costs roughly $6.5 million every single day just to keep a single U.S. Navy carrier strike group in theater? That is not just for fuel and food. It is for the massive technological shield that prevents small-scale provocations from turning into a regional conflagration. You might wonder why we spend that much, but when you consider that over $1 billion worth of oil passes through that strait every day, the carrier group starts to look like a very cheap insurance policy. It reminds me of a conversation with a veteran merchant mariner who spent 30 years navigating these waters. He told me that the scariest thing isn't a massive warship, it's the ghost Dhows, small fishing boats that carry high-grade explosives or sophisticated surveillance gear. He said that when the tensions rise, every ripple on the water looks like a periscope. That is the environment our sailors are currently living in, where the line between a peaceful afternoon and a total engagement is thinner than a razor's edge. When Trump vows more strikes, he is referring to a specific escalation ladder designed to paralyze Iran's coastal defense systems without launching a full-scale ground invasion. The plan involves the use of B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, each costing over $2 billion, to neutralize the anti-ship missile batteries that Tehran has tucked into the limestone cliffs overlooking the water. If these batteries are eliminated, the sword of Damocles hanging over the tankers disappears, but the risk of a retaliatory strike on U.S. bases in Qatar or the UAE skyrockets. Have you noticed how quiet the markets get right before a major announcement? That is because the big institutional investors are waiting to see if Trump will pull the trigger on a kinetic blockade, or if this is another round of psychological warfare. You have to agree that the stakes have never been higher for the American consumer. We are looking at a contrast between the wait-and-see approach of the previous administration and the strike-first, ask-later reputation that Trump is currently leveraging. Which one do you think is more effective at keeping the peace? Let's talk about the Lion 34 class missiles that Iran has been showing off in their recent military parades because these are the X factor in this entire equation. These are long-range, precision-guided projectiles that can theoretically bypass the Aegis defense systems on our destroyers. If Tehran believes they can sink a U.S. ship, their willingness to close the strait increases tenfold. Trump's warnings are intended to remind them that even if they get a lucky shot, the response would be disproportionate, a word that the Pentagon uses when they are talking about targeting critical infrastructure like power grids and oil refineries. The yes ladder is starting to form here. You want stable gas prices, you want American sailors to be safe, and you want the United States to maintain its status as the primary guarantor of global trade. If you agree with those points, then you understand why the maximum deterrence policy is being pushed so hard right now. It is a strategy of peace through strength, but as we have seen in history, strength is only a deterrent if the other side believes you are actually willing to use it. Consider the global supply chain as a massive, interconnected spiderweb. When a tanker is delayed in the Persian Gulf, it doesn't just affect the gasoline in your car, it affects the plastic used for your medical supplies, the fuel for the planes that deliver your packages, and the heating oil for millions of homes in the Northeast. We're talking about a domino effect that could wipe out trillions of dollars in global wealth in a matter of weeks. This is why the Navy's Fifth Fleet is currently the most important military unit on the planet. Trump is also looking at the energy independence angle as a way to insulate the U.S. from this chaos. By vowing to drill, baby, drill, and opening up federal lands for exploration, he is trying to tell Iran that their leverage over the American economy is expiring. But here's the catch. Even if the U.S. produces all the oil it needs, the global price is still set on the international market. If the strait closes, the price goes up for everyone, regardless of where the oil was pumped. You can see the contradiction there, can't you? The pattern interrupt in this story is the role of China. Beijing is the largest importer of Iranian oil, and they rely on the Strait of Hormuz even more than we do. For the first time in years, the interests of Washington and Beijing might actually align on one specific point. The water must stay open. Trump is reportedly using this as a diplomatic wedge to force China to rein in Tehran's aggressive posture. It is a high-level game of chess where the pieces are aircraft carriers and oil tankers. Why are we seeing more strikes now? Because the gray zone warfare, the small-scale attacks on tankers that can't be easily traced, has reached a tipping point. Trump is signaling that the era of plausible deniability is over. If a drone hits a ship, the response will be directed at the source, regardless of whose flag the drone was flying. This is a massive shift in the rules of engagement that has the entire region on edge. You might find it interesting that the U.S. has a secret reserve of interceptors that it has been stockpiling specifically for a Hormuz scenario. These are the SM-6 missiles, each costing about $5 million, designed to intercept those high-speed Lion 34 missiles we talked about earlier. The stock is limited, which is why the first strike capability is so vital. If you can destroy the launchers on the ground, you don't have to worry about intercepting the missiles in the air. It's a before and after comparison that the Pentagon is currently obsessed with. As we move toward the climax of this briefing, you have to realize that the Strait of Hormuz is not just a geographical location. It is a symbol of the old world order versus the new. If the U.S. fails to keep it open, the American century officially ends. If Trump succeeds in forcing Iran to back down through sheer intimidation and surgical strikes, he reestablishes the U.S. as the undisputed leader of the maritime commons. The momentum is building toward a final confrontation or a historic climb down. Every B-52 that takes off from Diego Garcia is a paragraph in that story. We are closing the loops now. The cost of the carriers is a necessary evil to prevent a trillion-dollar collapse. The stealth bombers are the scalpel to Iran's coastal sledgehammer, and the diplomatic pressure on China is the checkmate move that Tehran didn't see coming. Anticipation is at its peak because the next vow from Trump could be the one that changes the map forever. We have seen the pricing, the tactics, and the global stakes. You are now equipped with the same information that the top-level analysts are using to predict the next move in this sea of fire. To summarize everything we have discussed, Trump is using maximum deterrence to protect the 21-mile jugular of the global economy. The cost of military intervention is dwarfed by the potential cost of an oil spike, and the diplomatic alignment with China might be the secret key to avoiding a total war. If you want to stay updated on these high-stakes movements before they hit the evening news, you need to subscribe to Global Watch and click that bell icon. Leave a comment below and let me know. Do you think Trump's more strikes vow will force Iran to blink, or are we heading toward an unavoidable collision in the strait? Your insights help drive this community forward. Stay informed, stay ahead, and I will see you in the next briefing.